The gallery opening was meant to be a celebration. My husband, David, had been talking about it for months, his first solo exhibition. I'd spent weeks helping him prepare, arranging invitations, coordinating with the venue, even framing some of his pieces. I'd wake up at dawn to iron his shirts, make sure his portfolio was in order, and remind him of every last-minute detail. When I arrived that evening, dressed in my best black dress, the gallery was buzzing. People admired David's work, sipped wine, and congratulated him. I stood in the corner, watching him bask in their attention, feeling like an invisible assistant rather than his partner. A woman in a red coat laughed at something he said, her hand lingering on his arm. The way he looked at her made my stomach drop. I didn't wait for explanations. I left without a word, driving home in the rain with my hands shaking on the wheel. That night, I sat on our bedroom floor surrounded by half-packed boxes. David's apology call went unanswered. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to ask, what about me? Where is my art? My dreams? I found an old sketchbook under our bed. The pages were filled with vibrant watercolors, landscapes, portraits, abstract shapes. I'd stopped drawing when we moved in together. There's no time for hobbies in a serious relationship, David had said once, not unkindly, but firmly. Now, holding that sketchbook, I felt a spark, not of anger, but of reclamation. The colors on those pages were a whisper from my past self. You were still here. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I made coffee, put on comfortable clothes, and spread my old art supplies across the kitchen table. My hands trembled as I dipped a brush in watercolor. What if I'd lost my touch? What if the magic was gone? I took a deep breath and made the first stroke, a bold blue arc across the paper. It was terrible, laughably bad. But I kept going, layer after layer, letting the colors blend and bleed. An hour later, I stepped back. The painting was chaotic, uneven, and completely mine. I posted a photo on social media with the caption, "Day 1 of reclaiming my art. No masterpieces yet, but it's a start." To my surprise, messages poured in. Old art school friends reached out. A local coffee owner asked if she could display my work. A stranger commented, "Your honesty is as beautiful as your colors." That evening, I set up a small workspace in the spare room. I bought fresh paints, new brushes, and a proper easel. For the first time in a long while, I fell asleep not with anxiety, but with anticipation. The act of creating had become a lifeline, a way to say, I am still here, and I matter. 3 weeks into my artistic revival, Linda from the Blue Cup Cough called. "I've hung your 3 pieces," she said. "People are stopping to look." One just asked if they could buy the abstract one. I rushed over after work. My paintings, once hidden in a dusty sketchbook, now adorn the cafe's west wall. Strangers studied them, smiled, even took photos. "I never thought anyone would care," I told Linda. "Of course they care," she replied. "Art isn't about perfection. It's about connection." That weekend, I hosted a mini exhibition at the Cough. I served homemade cookies and played soft jazz. People came, and not just acquaintances, but curious locals drawn by word of mouth. One elderly woman lingered by my landscape painting. "This reminds me of my childhood home," she said, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for bringing that memory back." Another visitor, a high school art teacher, offered me a part-time teaching gig. "You have a way of making people feel seen," she said. As I watched my paintings find homes that evening, I realized something profound. My art wasn't just for me anymore. It was a bridge to others, to my past self, to possibilities I'd never imagined. Art was healing my soul, but my bank account told a different story. Rent, utilities, groceries, the numbers didn't lie. I needed income, and fast. I started small. Commissioned pet portraits for $50 each. They were simple, but people loved them. Then I designed greeting cards for a local boutique. Each sale felt like a victory. But I wanted more. I researched online platforms for independent artists, created a website, and launched a Patreon. The first month, I made $237. Not enough to live on, but enough to buy better materials. One day, a message appeared in my inbox. "We'd like to feature your work in our upcoming Emerging Artist issue." It was from a regional art magazine. The feature brought new clients. A corporate office commissioned a large mural. A book publisher asked me to illustrate a children's story. Slowly, the money started to match the passion. More importantly, I learned financial lessons I'd ignored for years. Value my work, no more friend discounts. Save for lean months. Invest in quality tools. Diversify income streams. For the first time, I felt in control of my financial future, not because someone else provided, but because I'd built it myself. The act of earning from my art wasn't just about survival, it was about proving to myself that my creativity had worth. Some nights, memories crept in. David's laugh. Our first apartment. The way he'd say, "You're too sensitive for this business," when I shared my art dreams. I'd wake at 3 a.m., heart pounding, wondering, was I the problem? Could I have been more supportive, more understanding? One rainy afternoon, I visited my childhood home. My parents had kept my old bedroom exactly as I'd left it at 18. There, under a pile of textbooks, I found a letter I'd written to myself. "Dear future me, remember, you are an artist. Don't let anyone dim your colors. Paint every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. You matter. Your art matters." Tears streamed down my face. I'd forgotten this version of myself, the one who believed in her dreams unapologetically. That evening, I created a new series, Letters to My Past Self. Each painting incorporated fragments of that old letter, layered with vibrant colors and abstract shapes. It was messy, emotional, and utterly freeing. When I posted the series online, dozens of women shared similar stories. "I forgot my dreams too," one wrote. "Thank you for reminding me to rediscover them." The act of revisiting my past self wasn't about regret, it was about reclaiming the parts of me I'd buried under years of compromise. At an art supply store, I bumped into Eleanor, a retired art professor. She'd seen my café exhibition and wanted to talk. "You have raw talent," she said over tea, "but you're missing technique. Let me help." Every Saturday, I went to her sun-filled studio. The space smelled of linseed oil and old wood, with canvases stacked in every corner and shelves lined with art books dating back decades. Eleanor didn't sugarcoat her feedback. She pointed out my weaknesses with a bluntness that initially stung: the uneven proportions in my figures, the muddy color mixes, the compositions that felt cluttered rather than intentional. But beneath her directness was a deep care. She taught me to see art not just as emotional expression, but as a language with its own grammar. We studied classical masters, analysed modern innovators, and experimented with materials I'd never tried. She pushed me to work larger, to take risks, to fail spectacularly and then try again. One afternoon, she handed me a blank canvas and said, "Paint your fear." I hesitated. What did that even mean? But as I picked up my brush, memories surfaced, the times David had dismissed my art, the self-doubt that had silenced me for years, the terror of putting my soul on display. The painting that emerged was chaotic, swirling blacks and greys pierced by streaks of defiant red. When I stepped back, I was breathless. It was ugly. It was raw. And it was honest. Eleanor studied it in silence, then nodded. "Now you're beginning to understand." Those sessions became my anchor. With Eleanor's guidance, my work evolved not into something polished and safe, but into something truer. I learned that skill wasn't the enemy of authenticity, it was its vessel. Months into my mentorship with Eleanor, she suggested a collaboration, a joint exhibition where our works would dialogue across the gallery space. "Your fresh perspective and my experience could create something unexpected," she said. The idea thrilled and terrified me. Could my work hold its own beside hers? Would people see me as a real artist or just Eleanor's proc? We spent weeks planning. Eleanor worked on a series about memory and time, using layered textures and muted earth tones. I created pieces about rebirth, vibrant, explosive compositions with bold shapes and contrasting colors. Our styles were different, but they spoke to each other. The opening night was surreal. People moved between our works, comparing, discussing, sometimes standing silently for long minutes. A critic approached me. "Your pieces have such energy. They feel like a declaration." Later, Eleanor pulled me aside. "See that couple by your triptych? They've been there 20 minutes. That's what art does, it stops people in their tracks. You've earned your place here." For the first time, I didn't feel like an imposter. I was an artist not because of accolades, but because I'd put in the work, faced my doubts, and kept creating. The collaboration wasn't just about two artists sharing a space. It was about two journeys intersecting, each enriching the other. 6 months after our separation, I received a letter in the mail. David's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. He didn't ask for reconciliation. Instead, he wrote about his own journey, therapy sessions, realizations about his fear of intimacy, and a newfound respect for the art ID reclaimed. I see now how I dimmed your light, he admitted, and am proud of who you've become, even if it's without me. Reading it, I felt no anger, no longing. Just a quiet sadness for what we'd lost and gratitude for what ID found. I wrote back, not to reopen old wounds, but to offer forgiveness. Thank you for seeing me, I concluded. I needed that. That night, I painted a single sunflower, simple, bright, facing the light. It wasn't about David anymore. It was about choosing growth over regret. The act of forgiveness was for him, it was for me. A final brushstroke in the painting of my new life. Inspired by my own journey, I accepted the part-time teaching position at the local high school. Standing before a classroom full of teenagers, I felt both exhilaration and terror. What if I couldn't inspire them? What if I failed them as David had failed me? But on the first day, as I watched them uncap brushes and dip them into paint, I saw echoes of my younger self, hesitant, hopeful, afraid to make a mistake. I told them my story. The years of silence, the rediscovery of art, mentorship that changed everything. Your voice matters, I said. Even if it wobbles. Even if it's messy. Especially then. One student, Mia, approached me after class. I thought art was just for the talented ones, she admitted. But hearing you, maybe I can try. Teaching became my second calling. I learned as much from my students as they learned from me about courage, about curiosity, about the joy of creation for its own sake. In helping them find their voices, I solidified my own. A year after my first CAF display, I stood in an empty gallery, preparing for my first solo exhibition. The walls were hung with my latest series, Rebirth in Color, a collection that traced my journey from darkness to light. Each piece told a chapter. The fear, the doubt, the breakthroughs, the joy. As guests arrived, I watched their reactions. Some paused before a stormy abstract, nodding as if recognizing their own struggles. Others smiled at a canvas bursting with golden hues, the colors of new beginnings. A woman in a red coat, the same one from David's exhibition, now a friend, squeezed my hand. "You've come so far," she whispered. That night, I signed copies of a small catalogue featuring my work and story. Strangers became supporters, critics became admirers, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel pride, not arrogance, but a quiet confidence in what ID created. This wasn't just an exhibition. It was a declaration. I am here. I am seen. I am an artist.